Exactly. It's been such a long time.
It has been, that's real.
So much has changed, especially your hair. What happened to your braids?
Well, I just got rid of them, and then I wanted to get back to the African roots, and decided to have someone to take care of my hair. That happened in Cardiff. So I met this Nigerian hairdresser, and she just took care of my hair, and I took care of my knowledge of African culture. As a Congolese in Italy, like as a Congolese Italian person, I never really connected to my African roots apart from my relationship with my parents and my relatives in general. And that's also why I started working on a documentary on African migrants.
Yeah. So what made you decide to start that project in Cardiff?
I don't know whether you remember when we were in Cardiff, there was this area of the city that was leading to the bay and Newtown. And everyone was telling me, oh, that's such a dangerous area to go during the night, and don't go there by yourself, you can get mugged or something like that. And actually when I worked there for a brief period of time as an intern, I noticed that it wasn't dangerous at all, that people were really welcoming. So that's why we decided to call the documentary Invisible Cities with the brackets, in brackets, because we wanted to focus on all those neighborhoods where there are so many migrants that people from the same cities are actually afraid of going there in that quarter because they don't know the culture of people living there. So that's why Invisible Cities. Are you familiar with the video of Newtown? Are you familiar with the area of Newtown?
Yes, I am, yeah. This is all the new here, so it's all the new expensive flats. And this part here is just Newtown now with a high rise and just these small houses.
Some people who live in Newtown, they say that they feel like they are kind of divided from the rest of the...
Just by the look of it here, it's like a north-south divide, isn't it? It's, well, you can see the difference, the different areas, and how that would be quite cheaply to live. Mm-hmm. But this would, because all these are council buildings. Uh-huh. They're all council houses.
From behind the church.
Yeah, from behind the church, all that, and the tower block, the 2 tower blocks there. Uh-huh. That's all council. That's where they would all moved from down the old bay, Tiger Bay years ago.
Yeah, I read it was quite a tough area.
I would have thought so, yeah. Yeah, I couldn't. Where the bridge is down there, as maybe a young teenager, if my mother found out that I went under that bridge, then I would be in big trouble.
Yeah?
Yeah, because they say it was dangerous because you were in to the bay, not to the docks.
So the very first thing we did in Cardiff was to go to the Newtown History and Art Centre, because its director, whose name is Professor Glenn Jordan, he's an expert on the history of migration, especially from Africa to Newtown.
The immigration in Cardiff dates certainly from at least the 1800s, because Cardiff was a major seaport. And then merchant navy men coming from around the world. So the first 100 years of the African immigration into Cardiff involved single men who were, for the most part, merchant navy seamen. They did not come as families.
This is the Queen of Denmark. I did a lot of work over there in the ship. So we used to be sailing every day beside the market in some places called Neighbourhoods. Yeah. So we worked there. This is Oslo, if you know it.
It looks sunny. Surprisingly sunny. That's you? Don't kid me.
Yeah, it's me. Different.
Yeah.
It's good. This is my father and mother and sister back home.
Thanks.
Good, huh? You have that guy who's in Cardiff Bay.
We talked with Imad, and his wife, and then we met the family next to them, Brenda and Carmelo.
That's a big family.
Yes.
Multicultural big family, that's house. That's a good example, that house you went there. Because you used to see, I don't know, you see different culture, different people inside that house. He's the boss, and he live the way you live it. That's all way. And he still, sometimes even you see him in this cold weather walking with his short and his top 10.
Right. My grandmother, Nellie, was married to a Maltese, Chico Nelly. My auntie Mary was married to Joe Cadina, Maltese. Auntie Rosie, married to Italian, Peter Varello. My mother, Camena, married George Borge, Maltese. My auntie Peggy married 2 Jamaicans, Steve Caudle and Harold Ixie. I don't know. Anyway, Auntie Kathleen married Abdul Haq, Bengali. And Tessie married Michael Sidoric,
Polish. So have you done anybody else?
Yeah, we spoke with him and his wife.
Ah.
Also, you met in Sudan and...
No, we met in Syria. We used to study there together.
We studied in Syria together.
Ah, okay. What were you studying? Communication, journalism, or...?
I study philosophy.
And me, sociology.
Okay.
When I finished my education, I didn't went back. She went back for 6 years. But for me, I didn't return back for some political reasons. And this is why the future wasn't so bright in that time. Most of the thing was not so clear. For me, when I finished from Syria, I went to Egypt. And after Egypt, I went to Ukraine. And after Ukraine, I went to the Netherlands. This is why everyone has his own story. And I can't say I was planning to do that and that, because sometimes nothing in your hands. You're just waiting for tomorrow. Did you visit this area?
No.
Outside?
You mean Viewtown?
Yes.
Yeah.
You can visit. If you need any help or if they need help, you can ask them some questions.
So this is my beautiful house.
Okay, so you're close by.
Yeah. So yeah, I had to, because myself and my girlfriend work, and we didn't really want to leave the area, so we had to buy. Because there's no way in the world we would get a house through the council. Yeah. So yeah, we had to pay a mortgage to stay in the area.
So you didn't want to leave Viewtown?
No, I didn't want to leave. No. Because I feel a strong sense of belonging here, and I would like my children to have that same sense of community.
And even when you were little, you were living here around?
Yeah, so I'm 5th generation in Viewtown. So my great-grandparents moved here from all over, like a turn of the century. Yeah.
From all over UK?
From 2 came from Norway, 1 came from the Philippines, and 1 came from Barbados. And then obviously they all met either Welsh or English girls and settled here.
Hey, son. Okay, we are just around the Togayo Cafe.
I like your documentary. I love it. As soon as I seen it, although I didn't know much, I didn't need to know much. I am what you're writing about. I am this product. I'm an in-betweener. My wife is in Somalia. I live here. And my brothers and sisters and my history is in Denmark. So I'm an in-betweener, and when I say home, I mean 3 homes. I could live 3 lives in 3 months and be in 3 different places and still call it home. So just to be free spirited. The whole world is our home.
Being British, being African, being European, they all complement each other. We just got used to putting people in boxes, you know. Whenever you fill in an application form, I'd love to tick more than one box because I find myself across in all these places. I have cousins in Australia, in Austria, in the US, in some of the Arab countries, across Africa. That gives you the opportunity to have understandings of many cultures. I can go to places in Africa, across Africa, and just be at home. And I would go to Europe and be at home, and I'd be any of the Arab countries, so many Somalis speak Arabic, and be at home. We just maybe understand half the world population.
The community of Buttetown developed as an area that had more than 50 nationalities. So Cardiff was uniquely a kind of multicultural and to some extent intercultural city from a very long time. I say intercultural because in Buttetown for many generations, if you said that this family was Arab or that family was West Indian, what you really meant was that the father was Arab or West Indian. The mother could have been from the Rhondda, the Welsh Valleys, and so on. The two women might have been from the same sort of place.
So yeah, it is, and it still is a multicultural. It's not as much as it used to be, but there is still a lot of different cultures. You'd be surprised the cultures down here.
And how are people coping together? I mean,
we cope okay. So we can.
What?
How do we cope with the culture down here?
It's the same everywhere.
Yeah, it is in every here. It's like I said, it's not. It's I would say here is better than anywhere else in Cardiff, wouldn't you?
Because we're multicultural, isn't it?
Yes, like in a lot of places in Cardiff, they're not multicultural. And
there's a few places around, but not like here.
Yes.
I mean, like I said, my auntie Kathleen, she got 7 children, Bengalis, Indians. My auntie Tessie got Polish children. My auntie Peggy had 4 children, Jamaican children, coloured. My auntie Mary had 7 Maltese children. My auntie Rosie had 2 Italian children. But there's when you look at all the children, our cousins, and then our second cousins, there's so many different nationalities now. You could put them in the national, you know.
Yeah, you could.
You could. Yeah, you could go around the world. Yeah. There's all different colours and all different nationalities.
The people coming from different countries, and they start to communicate, and some of them settled here, bring their culture. They didn't forget their culture.
how was the change from Somalia to the UK?
Oh, it was a massive change. It was a huge change, and from predominantly being in one culture, predominantly being in one religion, predominantly being in one color, to come into a fantastic array of colors and cultures and religions, languages. It's just, I found it very fascinating to learn about people. There are people I met in Wales and Cardiff that I wouldn't have dreamed of meeting. It's just fantastic. You meet everyone, especially when you go to university and there is this beautiful quilt of languages and people coming from all over the world. You suddenly become international without moving an inch.
Well, again, I was the whitest kid of all my friends. You know, so when I was, when I was in school, 13, 14, 15, 16, you know, yeah, I was the whitest kid of all my friends. So I had a kind of a bit of an identity crisis of, you know, wanting to be a bit darker, you know, to kind of fit in. So you speak to a lot of people, especially of my generation, didn't really know what racism was didn't even know what race was until, you know, we were 10 or 11 or 12. But everyone had different races in every family, so the norm was to be mixed. But then obviously once you go out into the wider world, you kind of realise that there are differences, and you realise that people are treated different as well.
People are too comfortable. They don't want to leave. They don't want to go external. Wherever you go in a city, it's without me saying anything. Oh, you're from Newtown. I'm like, no.
Really?
Yeah. The mixture of Newtown being a gem and growing into being Cardiff's like a hidden gem. And people saying, oh, Newtown is this, that. So it's such a nice feeling when somebody got a bad perception of you and it's broken down. And it actually comes as a shock.
A little before 1920, in one of the local newspapers, and the person writing the article said that what would happen if a group of Tibetan monks in orange gowns with pigtails, beating drums, marched down Butte Street, and he said nobody would notice. So it's a sort of joke, but it makes a point about multiculturalism, early multiculturalism. In terms of Cardiff's long history of immigration, one way to think about it is to say that one wave of immigrants has to do with the merchant navy and the seamen and their families, and then another one has to do with people who were refugees, or mostly refugees, some were economic migrants, but mostly refugees, asylum seekers.
So what are the ethnicities you can find in Butte?
Inuit, Navajo, Congolese, Sudanese, all the West Indies, French Guiana, Cape Verde, all over Spain, Greece, wherever. Somalia, Somaliland community. Mm-hmm. Then there's a big Yemeni community, and then there's also like Syrians, Iraqis, I think, And again, more Sudanese have come in recently with the troubles in Sudan. Yeah.
There are a dictatorship in Sudan up to now. If you fight against, or if you work against the government, then it is not allowed for you to be there. Not by law, but when you go there, they can arrest you, and then they can torture you, and they can do what they want. The people who have some political activities prefer not to go back again. And sometimes until the government change, sometimes until they change their policy.
Most immigrants, like taking it from my father, they live in this country with their luggage. So even though they're home, they haven't settled in. If they really, truly felt comfortable, they would have brought all their belongings out and chucked the boxes away and their luggages. But it's not. It's always the luggage. If the luggage could speak, it would say, when am I going back home?
For a long time, I preferred to live in the UK instead of the Netherlands, but it is not allowed. And first, I live in the Netherlands as a refugee, and then after that, when I got the Dutch nationality, I decided to come to the UK. The language, our community, we have a very big community in the UK in general. For the children, their education, the chances to work or to study.
People in Somalia know about Cardiff. They know about the community in Cardiff. They know about the mosque in Cardiff. And even sometimes I've heard anecdotally that there is a little girl in Somalia that's called Cardiff. Somewhere in the villages of Somalia, there is a small girl called Cardiff. And because for almost 100 years, there were seamen coming to Cardiff and going back to Somalia and telling people about what Cardiff is. And so there is that connection and that affinity.
When I first came to Cardiff as an African American, I was shocked by the degree of social integration. Shocked, absolutely shocked. For example, to make the point clearer, I grew up in California, but I have never, I thought about this a few years ago, I have never in my hometown been in the house of a white person. Never. Right? I knew white kids at school, some of them were my friends. I knew vaguely where they lived. I knew the direction. I could say, they lived that way. But I didn't know any of their parents, their brothers and sisters, and so on. I mean, I grew up in a much more segregated world.
When you say integration, what is integration? You have to take somebody, integration, you can take it from young. But if you bring up somebody, like refugees, come to the country and you try to integrate, it's not easy. It's not easy to bring somebody to just come up older like me today and say, okay, I'm going to put you to integrate into integration program.
We spoke with one man and he was saying that for his children who are teenagers, it's quite easy to go and integrate. And he couldn't just come in a country or in a city or in a neighborhood and, be there and, okay, now I will integrate with everyone,
Young people find it much easier and they pick up language much faster. And they spend 8-9 hours in a school environment where perhaps an elderly person, if we take a situation where you have a single mother, maybe at best she would have 1 or 2 hours tuition a day. For a couple of days a week. It's very difficult to come to another country. Most of these people have gone through a hell to get here, and then you expect them to stand at the bus stop and chit-chat with people. They have a lot of worries. They're worrying about what are they going to eat today, how are they going to sort out their problems with housing, how are they going to go and find the GP. So it's not the easiest of things, but there ought to be platforms for integration.
If you take a term like social integration, the extent to which you would find, say, black and white people in the same sort of social space conversing with each other, there's much more of that in Cardiff than in some other places. And people who come from elsewhere in England make that kind of observation. If you ask a different question, like how well do black people get on in terms of jobs and employment and so on, so if you say, like, if you're a black professional from Africa or the son or daughter of them, the truth of the matter is you probably would do very badly in Cardiff. And that's been true for quite a long time. I think there's a lot of social integration. In terms of economic integration, not so much.
If you go to do anything anywhere, most of the things depend on your qualification. Here, if you go to the police station, here maybe you can find 2, 3, 4 black or color people.
You get the opportunity here. And I don't know if you notice it, but everywhere you find it, even you work in a job center, you find people working in a job center from different culture. You go to the bank, you find people from different culture. You go to the police, you find people from different culture. You go even to the parliament, you find people from a different culture here. It's more open. The British, for me, they got the experience of England.
It's still a good place to live. There's still opportunities for people who want to take advantage of the opportunities. Kind of got to get over the thing of what have happened historically and make the most of what opportunities are available. There's still a lot of unemployment, isn't it? There's still a lot of young people with a lack of aspiration, or not even if it's not aspiration, a lack of belief, really. So yeah. But I guess that's countrywide, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
There's something like that I've heard about. So in the 50s, 60s, even 70s, up into the 70s really, there wasn't many people of any other race that lived outside of Bhutan because there was much more racism. Yeah, so the older generation have paved the way massively. They've gone through all kinds of troubles and strife and racism. to make Cardiff a multicultural city, really.
You'd hardly find a Somali person who's telling you, or for the fact, an immigrant who's telling you, you know what, I don't want to, I'm healthy and I just don't want to work. Most people very badly want to work. Most people actually are desperate to work. We don't tend to talk about these people. We don't tend to talk about the many, many hundreds of thousands of immigrants who make UK what it is. And we contribute, statistically, immigrants contribute more to the economy than we take from. We're not a drainage of the economy at all. That's being said, for the Somali community, although some of the community are immigrants and they're newly arrived, but the majority of the community are people who see the UK as their home. You know, they've been here for many years, for generations. This is their home. This is their country. And if they are not getting the jobs that they should, or they are falling on hard times in terms of unemployment, it's not because they are Somali, it's because they are a product of this society. You know, the child who's born and brought up in the UK is a product of the UK. His failures are to do with our collective society, and his success are to do with our collective society. It's nothing to do with him being Somali. You know, we can't say Mo Farah is a British legend, but the other Somali Abdi who stole something, who also was born and brought up in the same area, is Somali. They're both British. You know, this one was given their right opportunities, this one wasn't. We need to look more as a society what we provide.
And then we decided to enlarge the project and go to the US, to Los Angeles, and do some research there.
In the Tony Blair's administration, I was the Race and Equality Commissioner for Wales, and loved it. That was one of the best years of my life. Butte Town is unique because it's unique in the sense that, like I've said, it was one of the first multiracial community that ever existed in Europe, and it developed. Mainly because of the docks area of Cardiff. So over generations, there are people that have been living in that area of the docks. So there's a feeling that they belong. There's an element of belonging there. And I think that part of being in a community that's relatively poor and lots of inequality, sometimes people don't understand that's still your home and that's still your community. I've always wanted to come to California. Okay. And then I met my husband, and he had a job here at the University of Southern California. So it just worked out perfectly. Plus I'm a social worker as well. And there was a job going in the School of Social Work, so I applied, and today here I am.
How did you find out about me? I know you said George Lippitz, I think.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Because we met this professor in Cardiff, and he's from California. And he told me to contact George Lippitz.
Okay.
And then George told me to contact you.
Okay. I've had students from different parts of Africa, but primarily Nigeria and Ethiopia. When I did my research and interviewed Africans, so much of their experience and their identity, especially for the young ones, was how their parents, how much they were involved in the community. So if they were the children of Nigerians and their parents took them to all kinds of events, community events, and involved them in celebrations, and they knew the other kids in the community, they were much more likely to identify as being Nigerian.
In Cardiff, the interesting thing was that the community, the Somali community, is quite isolated. So I was wondering whether in LA it's similar, or
The Somali community?
in general the African communities, whether because also in Brussels, for example, there is the Matonge quarter where all the Congolese are living, and there are shops and everything.
Yeah, it's more so because LA, the thing about LA in general is that it's very spread out.
Yeah,
You can drive for 2 hours and still be in LA County. And so if you want to do something on a regular basis, it's tough to get people to come on a regular basis to travel for an hour, you know. So that's kind of, part of the issue. People will come off for personal events. Like, I'm originally from Tanzania, and when there's a funeral in our community, I know sometimes we've got naming ceremonies, people will come. But if we tried to get a Tanzanian association together, one, there's enough of us here, but a lot of us live too far. And so then the problem would be, well, where would you even meet? So yeah, those are I think that's probably the biggest characteristic of LA is that it's just spread out. The population is very dispersed.
I came to America in 1972. Yeah, and back then the community was very, very small. Everybody knew everybody. It was a fun time, really. I mean, every weekend, there was a party in somebody's house, and you would hear African music, and it was good for my soul, because when I came here, I felt really nostalgic. I had no friends. Yeah, back then we had Nigerians, Ethiopians, Ghanaian, Congolese, Angolan, Kenyan. But right now, this is 2013. Well, I can just give you an example. You see this field here, these guys playing football. All of them came. Some of them, I guess, they were even born here. I don't know. The only people I only know 3 people in that team. Only 3 people. The rest of them, I've never seen them before. So the community is very, very big now.
So where do people usually live? I mean, do they live in community or they just live wherever?
People live well here in Los Angeles. I can tell you, it's a big, huge town, and so people live in different areas. If there's a party, for example, and people come and then come to wherever the party is taking place, or in this instance, everybody knows that every Saturday there's a soccer game here at 9:30 or 10 o'clock, and they'll come. Yeah, from wherever they live, you see. So, yeah.
Because in Cardiff, the situation was that there is the city center, and then there is a street that leads to the bay.
Yeah.
And at the end of the street, between the bay, at the end of that street, there was a quarter that is called Buttown. And that is where the majority of migrants from Somalia or Somaliland or Sudan are living.
And that's where they live. Yeah. No, here in Los Angeles, it's not like that. In this town, you know, if you don't have a car, you are lost because you cannot really depend on public transportation.
Yeah, it was going to take us 1 hour to get here.
Oh, yeah. You know what? I was going to mention. Okay, you see that team over there?
Yeah?
Those guys are Nigerian.
Ah.
Yes. Yes, I know that for a fact.
Yeah, because I was reading that the biggest groups are from Africa, are Nigerian, Ghana, and
Ethiopian.
So when you see the Ethiopians, everything is Tnestelin. Everything is like a love and respect that they hold to this day. I mean, you know the world nowadays. You know, it's like, hey, what's up? What's up with you? You know. Or in America, you say, hi, how are you? Oh, I'm good. Oh, I'm feeling sick. I'm feeling this. But in Ethiopian, you say Tnestelin, which means how's your health? Tnestelin. And then you say it back, Tnestelin. That is the culture, and that is the true walk of an Ethiopian Christian. I'm from America, but if you trace my ancient bloodline, it all comes from Ethiopia.
Since 9 o'clock in the morning.
And then you see the time is just passing.
Yeah.
It's like passing, and then you say, I want to see the next. What is next? What is next? And then you don't see the hand. You don't see the hand turning around, and then boom, it's 6 o'clock. We're like, oh.
At least you're not home being bored.
We are friends. We are family, but most of the time we don't try to get involved in some people's business.
So you don't necessarily know what everyone is doing?
Not necessarily. Yeah. Unless if you come to me, you tell me, that's fine. Or if I'm looking for something, and then if I know that I can get that favor from you, that's fine. You can have somebody who just lend it. A newcomer, and then you said, I want a job for him. Then you can start talking to friends. Where do you work? Oh, I work in this field. Is it any possibility for opening? Because I do have a friend or a family member who just arrived and he needs a job. And in that case, the person who may say, oh yeah, I will take him with me and then introduce him to my boss, and he can get a job. The good thing is, once you coming, you are in order, so you are lawful. So you're not gonna be working as an underground person. You know, there are tens of thousands of people living in Europe who don't have papers.
I can tell you, wherever I go, whenever I come back from a trip, when the plane is landing in Los Angeles and I look around and say, oh, there's downtown LA. Oh, there is, I recognize the buildings. There's Santa Monica over there. I feel really at peace. A certain sense of tranquility comes over me, because I know I am home.
Moving. So we did the coast-to-coast trip by train, which was really cool, and we met all the African communities we could meet in that time. So especially in Chicago and Houston, and then of course New York.
It's a very interesting, mixed, very mixed area because it's not far from Manhattan.
When I came to America, so that's when I started studying African studies. And I learned a lot about the African presence in Americas. So it helped me. I realized that there was an invisible city in New York, invisible African city. There's so much African going on in New York City that if you didn't open your eyes, you wouldn't know. It was in Harlem. Back then, I produced programs, whether it's for radios, for TV, documentaries, music. My theme is Africa. I try to bring Africa to people any way I can. That's what I do.
I'm originally from Congo, the Democratic Republic of Congo. So these are from Old Kingdom, Cuba Kingdom. The mask is also Cuba. Yeah, you can pick it up if you want. Pick it up.
Sure?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, you can look inside. This was part of an exhibition that I worked on.
Ah, okay.
An exhibition at the Museum for African Art. The museum is, it's in Harlem right now. I became the director of education department. So I did education programs with schools, universities, teachers, teaching them about Africa, challenging the misconception, of people about Africa. I loved it. It was one of my things. So people came in with a very little knowledge of what Africa was, or is, still is. So we were giving them that information about Africa.
But what was the most challenging thing about trying to fight the misconceptions of people on Africa?
I was fighting with the media. So when I tell people, Africa is not poor per se, people were like, no. Yesterday we saw people running naked. I mean, I was dealing with people who were just like, they appeared to be dumb to me. They will just come out and then say, how come you from Africa came here? When you say, well, there are airports. People just couldn't, wait a minute, no way. I'm like, okay. So how do you think I came here? Did I swim?
When I moved into New York, I felt at home. I didn't quite know the difference between New York and living in Lagos, Nigeria, because I saw folks who could speak my language. And it's amazing how the first day I stepped on the ground, I ate the food. I ate the food I was used to. I wasn't actually here at New York University for studies. I was here to meet with people who would change the course of the world.
Many people that we talked to were telling us that they were eager to go back to their original country, but then there is also another side. There is the side of people who are here, and they started to create some centers or some community centers or associations to somehow make life easier for people who are coming from Africa to these cities.
The same way, there's a huge community of the Sudan, there's a huge community of Nigerians, huge community of Ghanaians, is good, but it's better to think of transforming, taking this community to doing the greater good in their host country. And for me, that's the ultimate goal. Africans have huge capacity. They are not docile, they are not ignorant, they are very intelligent, and we have the skills that can transform the countries of Africa.
1998. I was relocated in Greensboro, North Carolina. Working and going to school made it inevitable for me to adapt very fast. Students in high school, they are cool. And you have to have a tough skin if you're going to school. That's especially as an immigrant. The blessing that I have is I came here very young, so I was able to get accustomed to know how Americans think, so I can speak to them from their perspective about what they need to do to act. So I'm trying to be that bridge in America between the Congolese in particular and Africans in particular to the American people, to share that humanity that we all have.
What about here in New York?
In 2010 that I decided to come to New York. Men need to reach more people because of the work that I do. I'm a human rights activist. So I believe that if I can touch New York City, the whole world will know about the process of coming. So that's why I'm doing it. I haven't been in Beijing, but I can say now I have that New York feel, the Empire State of Mind, that I feel like the whole world is here. I can see anybody from any country in the city. Did you know that we have a young Congolese who is actually the first Congolese to open up a private equity firm at Wall Street?
No.
He was on the Forbes magazine last year, among the 7 best managers of Africa. He's 32 years old.
So everybody will love with winners. My case is different. I'm a successful businessman. You see, I live in a nice neighborhood. So people, when they see me, they're like, oh, and actually just yesterday, I was talking with a friend that I met in the bar. I was talking, and he was saying, oh, you are what we call an educated black, educated African. What does it mean? And then she was sorry, oh, I didn't mean it that way, but she just said it, you know? I didn't mean it that. So this is different. Like, they always dissociate. They're like, oh, if he's successful, okay, it's good to be with him. But we don't want to be with losers. My case is not the situation of most of African American. When you're poor in this country and you're black, then you're in shit. Then you're in trouble. If your father is rich in this country, even if you're black, you can still find your way out of problem. Even if when you're guilty.
And we have the first African president. They don't want to admit that he's Kenyan.
Hello, Sarah. Hi. We are just outside the CBS. Okay. Okie dokie, bye.
I've been living in the United States since I was 8 years old, but I'm very much in touch with my Congolese heritage and my background, and my culture. And yeah, I'm just pursuing a career in journalism. And right now I work at CBS, covering primarily sports, but I have a wide interest in a lot of different things. And I want to be able to work my way up to the level where I can tell stories, not only about the Congo, but in general, and be able to really do a great job and be known for, doing great journalism work.
Mm-hmm. And what brought you to New York in the first place?
We came here as refugees, and we came here strictly because my mother wanted to ensure that me and my two older brothers and my younger brother, that all of us could, have a decent future and be able to, make something out of ourselves. So we came to New York in August 1997, moved to Queens, stayed there for a couple of months, moved to Texas. It was just me and my brothers. My mother stayed here to try to figure out a housing situation for us. Stayed there for like 4 years and then came back to New York right before the Twin Towers went down. And and then we stayed here since. So that was in like 2001 where we settled in New York City. It was a very tough time, you know, and you throw in the fact that you're trying to assimilate to this new culture, new language, new friends, new food, new everything, and you're doing that without your parents there, you know. So that's something that I guess all immigrants share in a way, you know, being the new kid on the block and having to go through that period.
And what was the most challenging thing about that period?
I would say that the most challenging thing was just having to deal with it and feeling like you're the only one. Eventually, like all kids do, you make friends. You build a little bit of more confidence in yourself. You're able to speak the language a little bit more, so that helps too. And then slowly but surely, you step into this new world, and now you're comfortable in your skin again. But that's a process, and it's a tough process, especially when you're young. Have I suffered direct, blatant racism or blatant, oh my God, I don't want to be here? Yes and no. You know, I feel like I'm pretty sure other people have like more drastic stories. But I totally sense that from either people here or even people in Dallas, sense that, you know, there's this idea that all immigrants want to come here, steal your jobs, you know, and take over your country, which is not the case. Everyone's coming here to try to set themselves up to be able to help the future generation or give themselves a chance to be somebody. And I'm pretty sure anyone with, you know, with that kind of drive, anyone willing to do all this, I know that if the country that they're from initially, if it was in good shape and if they were taking care of their people like they're supposed to, everyone would rather be home than in a strange man's land. In a perfect world, I would be working in the Congo. I would love nothing more than to be able to go back to the country where I was born and be able to do great work, because I see that there's need for people with my skill set there, you know? My parents came here. My mother, who had a very high post at home, she came here, she had to become a domestic worker, like a nanny, taking care of kids. This is a woman who's studied, who's paid her dues, who's really, you know, worked to be at the level where she is. She had to go all the way back down and be a nanny. And my father was working as a security guard in Duane Reade, which is one of these local stores. And it's like, seeing how much they've worked and now where they're the level where they are now, you know, my mother's is a paralegal, my father's an accountant. So they've been able to battle their ways back up the ladder, you know? So I don't know. I look at that and I know that other immigrant children have that same, can relate to that same story. You know, it's hard work and we learn from it and it just makes us better people. It makes us fighters.